Welcome back to the table, friends. I'm your humble host, Gray DMs, and with me, as always, is my co-host and co-conspirator, Owen.
Yes.
You are listening to Tabletop by Night, a weekly podcast where we continue our exploration of Vampire the Masquerade. Tonight, we gather around the table to answer the question, where will the road take you?
Is it dirt road or paved?
No, all roads.
All roads.
So, before we get started talking about the clan, which we will occupy our time discussing tonight, we have to put out a disclaimer.
Uh-oh.
So, as many things, time tends to change social norms, and there's a lot more sensitivity about making sure that cultures aren't stereotyped and these days, as opposed to when some of this stuff was written.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're going to see a shift in the clan that we talk about that shies away from its roots and tends towards a new subject matter.
Probably for the best. Probably.
I would tend to agree. But right now, we'd just like to say we are going to talk about the clan in its entirety. So if you get offended by basically discussions of stereotypes that might be offensive, specifically towards gypsies, the traveling European, those type. This is what the clan was. And then you'll understand as we go on. So
the changes that have been made.
Yeah. So we're not here to offend anybody. We're just kind of reporting the news as is, but we are going to discuss the clan Ravnos. So let's start with like a little spread of information here.
Mm-hmm.
Ravnos, their nicknames are rogues, ravens, daredevils, vagabonds, wanderers, tricksters, mystics, the haunted, gypsies, criminals, deceivers, charlatans, shapers, seekers, unwelcome, and the 100 masked clowns.
There's a lot of nicknames there.
Yeah, some of them can also be racial slurs.
Yeah. Yeah, I see it.
So obviously, yeah, you'll start seeing the correction soon. So as a clan, the Ravnos basically have access in modern times to animalism, obfuscate, and presence.
Mm-hmm.
So a little overview here. Known as wandering tricksters, mystics, and vagabonds, the Ravnos are incurable daredevils who gleefully pursue the art of unliving dangerously. Nobody in the West understands the old Ravnos, and now it is far too late to do so, as Zapathursa it is a little hard, isn't it? Because like I keep wanting to say like Zarathustra or one of the like the
Zarathustra,
the biblical one that or the Judaic one that they're trying to like rip off of, but like it's not that. It's Zapathursa. Rose from his slumber in the week of nightmares, and in his death throes, wiped out nearly all of his clan.
Wow.
The remaining few are left without any connection to their true heritage and history and have been forced to rewrite it themselves. But if they do not wander before, they no longer have any choice but to, or else they will meet the same fate as their progenitor.
So like they're like drawn to wander, or they just don't have the choice.
So the clan in its many incarnations was generally always a clan of wandering tricksters.
Okay.
Originally, it was tied to the stereotype, maybe the unhealthy of like the concept of like a traveling band that would come in. They would basically offer services, often kind of tied to criminal acts and stuff to pull money and then like have to eventually flee town. So the Ravnos was kind of built on that kind of all those stereotypes of like the gypsies, like D&D's. Can't remember what their equivalent is in the Strahd novels. There's a whole like
I can't think what they're called either.
And then they had to like fix that one too because anyway. So let's go back to the beginning so that we can understand what we're talking about. The history of the Rom begins as wanderers and outcasts of the Enoch, the first city. One family of this Romani was known as the Pawara and were kinfolk of the descendants of Sarath, werewolves that would be later known as the Silent Striders. One night during their travels, the youngest daughter of the Pawara leader, Lateshi, invited a stranger to camp with him. The man introduced himself as Cain, though he would be called Cain in the Pawara tongue. After sharing with the Romani tales of the fallen first city, and his curse to never walk among the children of Eve, Cain was surprised to be invited by the Pawara to travel along side them for as long as he liked, provided he did not feed him amongst them.
So they knew what he was, for the most part.
The lupines that had long lived alongside the Powara refused to welcome Cain amongst them, but for the time being they tolerated his presence. During the months that Cain walked with the Powara,
You could just say he or they.
Yeah, I know. He came to be loved by them, particularly by the leader's son, an adolescent boy named Ravnos, who was filled with the passions and dreams of youth. When his father was killed by wandering vampires, Ravnos pleaded with Cain, to give his father eternal life, but upon realizing that it was not possible, Ravnos instead accepted the embrace himself. But when the werewolves realized what happened to him, they fell into a rage and advanced against Cain and his new child. Bloodshed was avoided only by the intervention of Lateshi, who shared with everyone her vision of the future where the Ravnos and his descendants would protect the Ram from other vampires that would otherwise drain them of their blood and souls. It was the destiny of the Ravnos to watch over the family among the living. Moved by her words, the lupines departed, swearing curses upon Cain and the Ravnos. Cain, for his part, realized that his time among the Ram was over, but taught Ravnos the powers of animalism and fortitude before departing. Ravnos is said to have later developed the signature discipline of his clan, chemistry, himself with the help of his sister, which is no longer in the game. So,
like she's been removed or she's perished?
The discipline.
I see.
Yeah. So, a different version of that story is the story continues to speak of the meeting of Ravnos and Anoia, who would eventually betray him and bring him to his death. I think if you remember, that was like the gangrel, where like she was supposed to be basically like the one that birthed the werewolves.
Yeah.
Guided by Ravnos and his childer, the Ram eventually came to the second city and made camp outside its walls. There, Ravnos witnessed the vampire Anoia being banished from the city, and he pitied her as one outcast for another. He welcomed Anoia into his family, and over time they became close friends as they shared tales of their journey, and then lovers as they made daring raids together to steal and beguile the Cainites of the second city. But Anoia grew bored of their time together and endeavored to supplant him as leader of the Romani by handing Ravnos over to the leaders of the second city.
Wow.
Yeah, no one ever does anything straightforward.
No.
When Ravnos and Anoia did not return from a foray into the city, Lateshi used her sight to find them and witnessed the destruction of her brother as he was left tied atop the city's high temple to meet the sun's morning light.
Wow.
Furious with rage, Lateshi summoned her kin among the childer of Ravnos and the descendants of the Serath so that they might subdue Anoia. When Anoia returned to the Romani camps, she was captured and Ram gathered to pass judgment upon her. According to the tale, it was Cain who would hand out punishment, however, joining the Ram's gathering to condemn the betrayer of his favorite son. Cursing Anoia as a beast, Cain placed upon her what would become the clan curse of all gangrel. Condemned, Anoia fled, but in her descendants, a feud would continue to be waged between the Ravnos and the gangrel.
That's interesting.
There is a third view.
Oh,
but this
boy.
was actually pretty short. So Nadists say that in Enoch, Erad embraced a thief named Drakion to spy on the third generation. Drakion, unfortunately, immediately betrayed his sire to all the other antediluvians, leading to the end of the second generation.
Short and sweet. I like
that one might be biased.
Yeah.
Just like, betrayer. So anyway, the Ravnos, however, have begun claiming a richer prehistory, recorded in the Karavalashina Rana, The Wounds of the Night Sword. This epic poem details how angelic beings, possibly the Kujin, betrayed their original purpose and became blood-drinking demons. To balance them out, the gods brought back to life a man who had been wronged by these something. I don't even know what that word is, more than any other.
Just got a bunch of consonants in it.
Yeah, there's like two Y's next to each other. I've never seen that one. This creature named Zapathasura was charged with the gods to exterminate him and return balance to the world. In his quest for vengeance, however, he embraced 5 childer: a seer, the Rakshasa, a shapeshifter, a military leader, Ravana, who betrayed and maybe the Yama king of the same name, and Ramasu, who served as an internal policeman for the war. These 5 Methuselah are all the ancient ancestors of the Ravnos. They served Zapathasura for centuries in prehistoric India until they wearied of the sire's endless war and slaughter, abandoning him and his own devices as time passed on. Ravnos eventually fell into torpor, and the clan restructured. Kind of see how there's like a complete change. Like, oh, no. They weren't traveling, gypsies. They're Indian. They're from India. This is completely different.
Yeah.
The
majority shifted to a separate part of the continent. That's all.
Yeah. The majority of the clan elders left India for the west, while Chandraputra remained in the subcontinent and reordered the clan among a more caste-oriented society. The culture faced 2 invasions around the time of Alexander the Great, Western vampires following the Conqueror, and the Kuei Jin on the crusade from China. At this time, Ravnos society diverged. The Ravnos heading towards the west began to deviate from the philosophy of Zarathustra, eventually creating what would become known as the Path of Paradox, which was kind of the original moral guideline for the Ravnos, which also tends to be kind of do whatever you want, but
just don't get caught.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the Indian Ravnos split into castes in a fashion similar to the Assamites, with multiple jati filling the different roles in the war against Wan Kuei. So, in the Dark Ages, Ravnos society in the Dark Ages was influenced by 2 phenomena: the continuing degradation of Western Ravnos from the Path of Paradox, and the influx of Indian Ravnos following the Roma. The Path of Paradox is a degenerate form of the Maya Parisatya, the classic path followed in India. Sybaritic Roman Ravnos changed the path into a license for self-interest and wanton diableries without following the original tenets. This form eventually became the standard path of the Western clan, while the Eastern path remained in India. The Path of Paradox and associated culture of the clan led to the low reputation that Ravnos had through Europe. So once again, kind of reshaping their whole history. Meanwhile, unknown to the other clans, Ravnos arrived with the Roma. These Ravnos were Shandalas, almost the Ravnos equivalent of a caitiff, but still felt superior to their mongrel cousins.
Of course.
The culture interchange with knives that followed led to a predominance of Eastern Ravnos in the Western clan. As time passed, the Roma Ravnos became the stereotypical Ravnos in the midst of Western kindred, and the Path of Paradox became the standard path for the Western Ravnos. By the 15th century, Western Ravnos were stereotypically seen as travelers, degenerates, and vermin. So they kind of did what they did with the Assamites, where they basically went back and they said, oh no, you're talking about a people that came from a noble culture and then kind of descended into criminals and lawlessness, instead of basically being oh, they were based off real life culture that was also persecuted for being that way.
Right.
So they got there where they wanted them either way.
It's we want them to be this particular way, but we can't do it stereotypically. We have to do it a little different.
Yeah, it's the whole thing. Is as time goes on and we realize that basically using cheap stereotypes that have hurt people in the past to basically create interesting characters, that we have to then go back and find other ways to make those characters interesting.
Right.
And in this case, it's pretty much, they could have taken the easy way out and they were just oh, no, they were never gypsies. They were always carnies.
They're just carnies. Small hands.
It smells like cabbage. We're oh, okay, that makes sense. So anyway, during the Victorian age, the camera learned that not all Ravnos were Romani, and that they were a formidable force in India. This discovery, of course, changed nothing in the way Western Ravnos were treated and seen in the Camarilla society. Contributing to this, many Ravnos saw the harsh and strict Victorian taboos and rules as obstacles and constantly attacked and overstepped them in order to further destabilize the establishment. But yeah, they're not charlatans; they're just rebel rousers.
Right.
They're brouhaha practically.
Practically brouhaha. Yep.
Many also used the blossoming interest in occultism and mysticism in order to trick and fool other kindred and mortals alike with long forgotten secrets. And they're do you know I have this? I get this oil, sacred oil from the motherland.
Just from the snake.
It kind of sucks because if they hadn't based it on a stereotype and it just had been a built-in thing, it would have probably held together and been really cool. So I think this is a real lesson in world design. Is don't go the cheap way out. If you're going to develop a culture, don't make them an analog for something that exists in our world. Kind of put the things you want in there, create a culture that's going to last, and then it can be cool and stand on its own.
Yeah.
And then hopefully, people won't be upset because you're referencing something that's painful for people. So anyway, modern knights for the Ravnos, the final knights were just that. The entire history of the clan pivots around the Week of Nightmares.
The week of nightmares. Wow, not even a night of nightmares. The week.
No, only 7 days. In the 1990s, the Cold War between the Kuei-jin of the Infinite Thunders Court and the Ravnos of India heated up. The Ravnos eventually took a page from the Sabat playbook and began mass-embracing candidates, sending armies of neonates to be slaughtered by the Wan Kuei. The psychic backlash from these deaths reverberated up the lineage of the Ravnos, eventually waking Methuselahs to join the fight.
That's how that works?
Only to result in the eventual waking of Zapathasura himself.
Holy crap, he's still around.
Yeah. Would that be crazy? Like, oh, hey, Bruja, let's go, like, go embrace a bunch of them and go kill them. Oh, that's weird. Did Dad wake up? Oh, God's Grandpa up. Great Grandpa.
Great Grandpa.
No. Baba Yaga. Zapathasura broke his fast on his own clan.
Oh, of course. Well, he's probably pissed. He's like, I was sleeping soundly.
It's like, what?
You guys woke me up.
Here? I have 3 different histories, and I don't even know which one of them is true at this point. And then proceeded to attack everything in sight, including most of Bangladesh.
Most of Bangladesh. Oh, okay.
I love when some lore just writes off like a whole giant city. Like, we don't go to Bangladesh anymore. Like, what?
Eventually he'll tire himself out.
Sun's going down.
Sun's going down, big guy.
His exact motivations were never clear because by the time the dust settled, 3 Badavistas, several packs of Guru, uncounted mortals, and an awful lot of technocracy ammunition had been barely able to stop the antediluvian. With his dying curse, Zapathasura set off a psychic bomb within his own clan, resulting in the Ravnos devouring each other in cannibalistic frenzy.
Oh my God.
And that is how you write out one of the 13 clans.
Wow.
Just like off the books. Most outsiders were aware only that the Ravnos spontaneously developed incredible powers of chemistry for about a week, then proceeded to attack and devour each other. Steve, you okay? I have these powers.
I am so strong. I am powerful. I am hungry.
By the time the week of nightmares ended, there were perhaps 100 Ravnos still this side of the final death, and none of them was significant generation of power.
So it's basically the ones who are like, I'm just going to go hide someplace.
Yeah, or like if you were just like staked in torpor the whole time, you wake up and you're like, my clan doesn't exist. What is going on?
It's true.
With their ranks significantly depleted and weakened, the surviving Ravnos of India sought shelter by other Indian kindred in order to avoid what would have otherwise been the finishing blow from their Bajali enemies in the Infinite Thunders Court. The Ravnos of the early 20th century are an endangered species trying to outpace their ultimate doom. Now cursed to wander without being able to settle roots like others, those who managed to survive the fateful encounter with the antediluvian just a few decades ago now, or managed to avoid his call altogether, have with their childer started a revival of the clan by taking in the nomadic roots in earnest, using their experience to stay ahead of the new threats to kindred existence. Some fight the curse by setting up multiple havens and using different masks in a single domain, but it is difficult work to maintain for long before something goes wrong for them. Before the companion, the Chicago Fellows described 2 vampires originally of Clan Ravnos, Shijana and Enzo Tavani, which I guess I didn't bring up.
Don't got nothing on them.
But that's one of the reasons why in our game, the Prince of New York did not want anybody to know her clan.
Yeah.
Was because she was Ravnos. Pretty cool. So that means
tell nobody.
Jason was a Ravnos caitiff. Caitiff. And he didn't get any of the properties, so he's really just truly a caitiff.
He's just a caitiff. And boy, is he in for a fun time in the future.
It's going to be great. Like, he posted on... Anyway, we'll talk about that later. All right. So, Clan Ravnos. Let's talk about their organization. What was...
I was going to say, what was their organization?
Yeah. And so just to clue in you listeners too, like so working our way through the 13 clans, we're on the last 2. This is the 12th and the next one will be the 13th. The first 12 are the ones that are still around.
Yeah.
Like the last, I take that back. The last 2 are for reasons why they don't come up that often. We'll kind of understand. And then from here on out, when we start talking about like sub clans and stuff that are out there, nothing is going to be as dominant or prominent as the previous. There's always going to be either a reason why the thing doesn't exist that much, a reason why you don't play it, or, something. But anyway, before the Week of Nightmares, back when the world made sense to the Ravnos.
Back in the 1990s.
Oh my gosh. The Ravnos were brokered into Western and Eastern divisions. Western Ravnos were largely individuals without larger clan loyalties outside of perhaps some tribal loyalty. Eastern Ravnos had their own caste system developed from the lineages that descended from Zapathasura. These Jadi were effectively bloodlines within the clan. The priests of the Indian Ravnos were the Brahmin, who maintained Maya Parasatya and advised the other castes. The Brahmin replaced fortitude with auspex, and many learned sadhana. The western cousins of this caste, the Puridae, are treated as a distinct bloodline due to the variant clan discipline.
It's a word.
Well, there's Clan Book Ravnos revised erroneously names in this caste as Brahmin instead of the Brahmin. It's The Kshatriya were the military leaders of the Ravnos and ran the war against the Asuratizaya. They maintained the equivalent of a masquerade in India and also managed mortal resources. They were effectively a military manager caste. And the Chandalas were the Ravnos equivalent of Caitiff. The Caitiff India were automatically classified as Chandalas. Demotion to Chandala status was a common punishment for heresy. These Jadi are directly related to the Yadi of Hindu society, with the equivalent of Chandura caste being ghouls.
So Chandala and what was the last one?
It was just Chandala.
Oh, okay.
But some of them have an S, I guess, plural.
Okay.
Anyway, since the Week of Nightmares, all that's gone pretty much. like I said, some Ravnos went back to India to try to start up things, and they probably will maintain the same caste system. But a lot of them are just kind of trying to survive. And
yeah, because there's not a whole lot they can do, because if it's all the low generations that are left, they're going to be a lot of Caitiffs and Thin Bloods eventually.
And even if they manage to grant potency just by consuming other vampires from other clans and stuff, they're never going to regain kind of the blood of their clan.
Right.
It is pretty much gone. So let's talk about Ravnos Antitribute. The Ravnos Antitribute are possibly the least Antitribute as Antitribute goes.
Okay.
They too revel in trickery and deceit. They too want to wander as they please, often joining nomadic packs. Sect notwithstanding, the Ravno Antitribute have a traditional code of conduct for dealing with their clanmates. This code may be difficult for those outside the clan to follow, but nonetheless, the Ravnos' word to his pack is the law. They follow the split and shake rule of all Ravnos on verbal agreements, but the rogue takes this one step further. If a Sabbat member wants an agreement in writing, it will be signed in blood, the pen dipped in an open wound on the Ravnos' own arm. This binding in blood is as strong as the Valderi to the Sabbat Ravnos, and it can be broken only by final death. Violating the code costs the perpetrator a considerable loss of face with other Ravnos, which has been adopted by the sect at large. Few Sabbat Ravnos feel comfortable giving this guarantee to Sabbat members outside their clan, and most do get quite indignant should the other party suggest it. In the final night, the Antitribute suffered the least of all the branches of the clan, as many traveled in packs with various members of other clans and could be put down by their packmates until the apocalyptic rage had died down. So like you said, Steve's looking a little weird. Yeah. Let's stake him for a few days.
Let's just stake him and leave him there for a while.
The Western Ravnos, historically connected with the oppressed Roma, maintained a strong sense of clan solidarity for a long time. The most common manifestation of solidarity was through a form of retaliation called the treatment.
That sounds ominous.
The treatment was a vengeance attack where a mistreated Ravnos would contact fellows in the clan who would then swarm upon the city where the original Ravnos was victimized. In general, a dozen Ravnos running amok could bring even the most experienced prince to the brink, and well-placed exaggerations about the impact of the treatment was the main weapon the Ravnos used to squeeze out what place they had in society. I think this is specifically the area that was a little problematic. Claiming that a lot of this stuff was done by real cultures. Past that, the Ravnos culture was dominated by its religious role. The greatest division between India and Western Ravnos being the difference between Maya Pasatya and the Path of Paradox. In 1998, Ravnos elders began to educate, with knives, their heretical cousins, setting the clan back on the straight and narrow.
Just needs a little re-education there.
In India, the Ravnos dominated the continent probably the largest concentration of a single clan in one country. In several ways, the Ravnos paralleled the Assamites, both clans having a caste system invisible to outsiders, and both clans were defined by a military role. So let's talk about the embrace.
Mm-hmm.
As with everything else in the clan, embrace is different between Indian and Western Ravnos. Western Ravnos generally embraced only gypsies, with the exception of the Ravnos Antitribu, who are noted for embracing Gorgios.
No idea.
I don't recognize it. And generally embraced for any reason. Indian Ravnos viewed the embrace as a means to fulfill the fledglings' svadhara. In India, one's yadi in life was defined by one's yadi in undeath. There's a bunch of caste stuff about India that I don't know anything about.
Yeah.
So, hey, if you know that, that's where a lot of this is coming from.
Get in the comments.
Yes, please. Tell us about it. So, bane and compulsion.
Mm-hmm.
Bane.
Doomed. Was this pre-psychic backlash that made them feed on each other?
This is the V5 version.
Okay.
A Ravnos bane is that the sun's fire that incinerated their founder rages through the blood of the clan, erupting from their very flesh if they ever settle down for long. They slumber in the same place more than once in 7 nights. Roll a number of dice equal to the bane severity. They receive aggravated damage equal to that number of 10s rolled as they are scorched from within.
So it's not even like, oh, I've been here for a week, I gotta go. It's like, I was here yesterday, I gotta go.
Yeah, so the same place more than once in 7 nights. So every 7 nights you can cycle. So happens every time they spend the day in a location they've already slumbered less than a week before. What constitutes a location in this regard depends on the scope of the chronicle, but unless otherwise stated, 2 resting places need to be at least a mile apart to avoid triggering the bane. Furthermore, a mobile haven, such as a mover's truck, is safe so long as the place where the truck is parked is at least a mile from the last location.
So, yeah, you basically got a guy with a U-Haul
camp.
That just, yeah.
That's got to be super dangerous. Cop comes around. You got to move this thing.
Okay.
Oh, geez, buddy. I'm so sorry. Yeah, that was a cool thing. That was one of the things because it never got brought up, but like in our campaign, the whole thing, because that was all like basically put in the core rulebook.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole thing with the prince was like no one knew where her haven was because she had like 7 havens because she had to bounce back and forth. So she had a whole ritual of like how she kind of cycled to maintain. Anyway. So yeah, compulsion. Tempting fate. The Ravnos vampires driven by their blood to court danger. Haunted as they are by righteous fire burning its way up their lineage, why not? The next time the vampire is faced with a problem to solve, any attempt at a solution short of the most daring or dangerous incurs a 2 dice penalty. The daredevil is free to convince any followers to do things their way, but is just as likely to go at it alone. The compulsion persists until the problem is solved or further attempts become impossible.
No wonder they're doomed.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
We're going to go rob this place. Awesome. We're going to do it right before dawn. What?
Yeah, so the Ravnos are kind of, they have all the trappings of being a really cool clan.
Yeah, like honestly, like a lot of that I thought was very interesting. It would be very fun to play a character like that. But at the same time, yeah, there's just not that many. You're going to have to hide who you are from everyone.
And they also used to have a unique discipline called chemistry. I think it's chemistry, which was basically all set up on like blood illusions.
Okay.
So that was the whole thing where you straight up basically could lie to people, like make them see things, swap stuff around. And it was once again kind of like geared towards this concept of like charlatans and like.
They just kind of rolled that into obfuscate probably.
Yeah, they replaced it with like animalism, obfuscate, and presence. So they're basically using like obfuscate and presence to be like, oh, hey, look what I'm doing. Oh, you didn't see that, you know?
Yeah.
And then, of course, like, I think they have a little thing on some of the variations of it can swap some of them for like auspex and stuff. But ultimately, like, the Ravnos is a really interesting idea. The idea of a traveling vampire in a world where traveling is like quite dangerous.
Very dangerous.
Is kind of cool. I wish that they had, instead of like doubling down on switching them away from the problematic culture stuff, I wish they had just kind of like redefined them. Like, oh no, like that's like it can be misconstrued, but they're more like blank, and then given them abilities to kind of deal with this, like them having something like Protean where they could basically go into the dirt and stuff like that.
Yeah, Protean. I was thinking that I was like Protean would be awesome, but I just thought that plus obfuscate plus presence, I mean, that makes a very powerful fire.
So like giving them, working with them to create, their own kind of rituals and stuff like that allow them to facilitate the things that they need to do would be really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Like if they had access to maybe like a subdivision of thaumaturgy that was specifically like kind of like a D&D-ish thing of like cloak the caravan, and they could like basically go live in a van, but like the van was almost like unnoticeable because of obfuscate.
Yeah.
And just like people were like repelled by even paying attention to it. Like you could really flesh out a cool way for them to exist. Fortunately, right now they're kind of swept under the rug as they just don't want to deal with kind of the negative connotation of having them. So
I was just thinking it'd be really neat to be like the vagabond, the hobo, like the train jumper.
Yeah.
Because like that's one of the things I always found was very interesting is a lot of these train jumpers, they die. They die from accidents and things like that, like getting out and off the trains. But one of the things is like they'll get inside like a grain cart, an empty grain cart, and then they'll pull into station and then they'll fill the grain cart. And I was just thinking, like, wouldn't that be interesting to be like that vampire? Because it's just like, oh, they're filling it up. Well, I guess I'm safe for a few days.
Until we get to the Kellogg's factory.
Right.
Uh-oh. Billy, take a few people on my way out. Also, like, I think, like, the hobo thing is really interesting because, like, in America, like, the hobos have, like, a rich history of coming up with their own signs, their own, like, terminology, coming up with ways to pass information back and forth. So that's, like, a really good basis to, like, build a clan,
And then wouldn't it be really interesting to be the hobo that's out, around the town or whatever and, like, looking to get attacked by someone? Like, you have those assholes that are just like, oh, it's a poor person, let's go beat the shit out of them. And that dude's just waiting for someone to come do that so he can like grab him in the alley and feed on them.
Yeah. Like, there's a lot of cool things like that. Or like you could also like do even with like the way Kindred Society works of like the wanderer who comes into town and like specifically picks a fight with someone to get captured by the sheriff, knowing that gives him like a day or two of food and rest. And then like he and it's just like, oh, you here again, Carl? It was like 5 years ago you came to the, just doing my rounds, boy, And it's just like, there's a lot of stuff to play there. I think the biggest problem is that as one of the 13, that kind of feels like they're pushed back down to like a bloodline.
Yeah.
Like they're just some little piece out there as opposed to like what they kind of should be as one of the big clans. And then, with the hard, like they got wiped out, but there are other good clans that got wiped out too. So
it really makes me wonder though, too, because like a really good place, and you kind of said that before, would be Carnies. Like it's not that all the Carnies are Ravnos. It's just like you have that one or two that are in the group. Everybody else takes care of stuff. They come out at night. They're a performer or something like that. They might be like a pickpocket or something like that that's out there stealing stuff. And carnivals never stick around for more than a week, so then they're gone.
Exactly. Like it's so good. And like I said, there's a lot of that's been used on like the D&D side of things. With I wish I could remember the name of the race. Because they've done the same thing. Like when a carnival comes, usually they start mentioning some of those people being in there. But yeah, like that's a really cool thing to say, especially like if even within their culture, because that'd be the greatest thing is like having this clan that's so rare that you're probably not going to unbeat. Like everybody's going to know the Venture, everybody's going to know. But then one of them comes to town, or especially if you have a wanderer and there's also a carnival in town, and they're like, oh yeah, I want to go see my cousin. And like they go there and you're like, oh no, don't do that. Like, well, let me hear. Like, I got to go introduce myself here. Like, like having all those weird things where like 2 or 3 vampires, like, and they have an agreement where any other vampire is just like, oh, no. They're in town for a little bit. We let them do their thing and we let them leave.
Right.
Like just like all those cool little, like,
it's like that wherever they are, that's their, what do you want to call it?
Their haven, their domain.
Yeah, their diplomatic area,
their
in the
territory.
City. Yeah.
That'd be cool. So there's some variants of it. Because like you could have like the Midwestern carnies that just do all the festivals,
right?
Like the Corn Fest, they're just like popping between each one, and like, oh man, like Ted, that's that big dude that always comes out when there are problems, there's a bunch of cool stuff there.
It'd almost be fun to play that game where you're just a group of people in the carnival traveling around and the trouble you get into.
That would be cool. It'd be a good way to like refresh things every once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, I feel like that would be like you would do 7 games, and all 7 games are one night. And then everything is finished in those 7 days, and then you don't play that game for a while, and then you're like, hey, next week we're going to start 7 days.
That would be cool. I think I would have a tendency to break that up into probably not specific vampire, like maybe have like an agreement where there's like, there's obviously a Ravnos there, maybe 2, and then like there's like a mage fortune teller who just wants to get away, and they've got like
the werewolf strongman.
Yeah, because it'd be so cool. Because then, like, if you are in a town, maybe other vampires are coming up to the Ravnos, and they're like, "Oh, we heard you got some blood, some special blood." Oh man, he's like, "Oh, it's a price, but I'll give it to you."
It'd be awesome because you could do changeling as well.
You're right. This is pretty cool. That's a really interesting thing. If we do explore the Florida game, I have a feeling that at some point in time the carnival will come to town.
I need to go see the bearded lady. Oh God.
oh. Well, that is the Ravnos. I think we've plumbed the depths of the lack of depth for the clan.
I mean, there was a lot there, but a lot of it's been retconned.
Yeah, like I said,
or
unfortunately,
just straight up wiped out.
Yeah, I think I suspect they had good reasons.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, it would have been nice if something was left over that still had that flavor.
Yeah.
All right. Well, unless you got anything else to add.
No, I don't.
We will see you guys later.
Goodbye.